for registering and joining today. I know there are lots of other things that you could be doing, but I appreciate that you are here with us to learn about positive childhood experiences. This is kind of like part two. If you were part of the ACEs training that was done recently, this is kind of like the follow-up to that. If you were not able to join in on the ACEs or are not familiar with ACEs, you can go back and watch that on our website. So it's there for you. This will also be recorded and posted there later as well. But I'm Christina Casterline, and I do work in Davidson County primarily. So I just appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today. I do want this to be interactive. So if you have any questions as we go along, please feel free to put that in the chat. There will be some questions that are proposed throughout the training for you to participate and share some responses. So hopefully everybody is comfortable in using the chat, and we'll just go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining this, and this training is brought to you by the FFPSA Regional Prevention Consultants for the University of Tennessee Social Work Office of Research and Public Service, otherwise known as SWORPS. So it's a mouthful to say, so sometimes we just call ourselves SWORPS. If you hear that, that's what we are. So our agenda for today is to just give an overview of PCEs and ACEs, and then talk about those building blocks for PCEs. We're going to talk about the HOPE framework and talk about those strategies, and then going over the protective factors from strengthening families. And then some trauma-informed approaches and strategies, and then a wrap-up. So there's lots of other things in between there, but those are just like the highlights of the agenda for the presentation. It's just a little bit of a lot. So put your seatbelts on as we go through this. Hopefully you're not driving, though. But anyway, so PCEs and ACEs. So I hope that you did have a chance to learn about ACEs, but we know that all those protective experiences help heal the brain from trauma. And so we know that research has shown with a PCE study that the PCEs can actually help mitigate the ACEs that have occurred. So that's good news when we think about kind of the downer that ACEs brings us when we think about, the impact on our lifelong health and learning and all the complications that come from adversity. It's good to have a success story. It's good to have some hope, and knowing that PCEs can help really change those things, change the perspective, and we can have a healthy, functional, growing, prosperous life. So what comes to mind when you think about any positive child experiences that you've had? What do you think about? What are some adjectives that describe some positive experiences in childhood? You can put them in the chat. Having fun, holidays, laughter, not having to pay bills, play, trips, vacations, being around family, support and love. Okay. Welcome, Jen. Playing outside, security. Right, having parents who show support and show affection, fishing, friendships. Well, those are great. Thank you all for those comments. So yeah, all of those activities that we can share together as a family, the trips that we take, those are all opportunities that we have to bond with one another. There are times when, we're not just doing an activity, but we're also communicating. We're also spending time together. We're building that connection, providing love and support to one another. So those adjectives are important when we think about the feeling that goes along with that activity. So, keep that in mind as you think about experiences. It's not just those activities, but also the feeling that comes along with it that makes it positive and makes and creates that bond. So it's very important. All right, so we have the HOPE framework next, and this is where we get those healthy outcomes from positive experiences. So this is the framework that we're looking at. So this study was done in 2019 that really kind of looked at the benefits of outweighing those negative outcomes with the positive outcomes. So there's a lot of research on that. We'll share a fact sheet with you later that the Department of Health created that has some statistics and more of the data if you're interested in that side of it. It's a lot to get into in this presentation, but just know that there is research that shows that we can mitigate all of those negative outcomes with positive outcomes if we build in those protective factors and create those positive childhood experiences based on the building blocks that we're going to talk about next. So the 4 building blocks for building those positive childhood experiences are relationships, environment, engagement, and emotional growth. So when you're thinking about what you put in the chat, with all the things that you think about when you are with your family and you're going on trips and you're doing activities together, can you see how that fits along with these building blocks? So in your families, you have that relationship, that environment. Hopefully that fishing trip was a healthy environment, was a safe environment, and it was something that you were comfortable enjoying and engaging in that activity. So there was engagement there. Hopefully it provided an opportunity for you to grow emotionally, for you to build that bond with your family. So all of these building blocks fit into each of those childhood experiences that we would consider positive. So we're kind of going to look at them each individually and talk about some things that we can do to build on those building blocks. So first, we know with relationships, we're talking about parents that are going to respond to those child's needs and offer those warm reactions. So adults who are outside of the family need to take a genuine interest in a child and support their growth and development. So we know that healthy, close, and positive relationships with peers are so critical to healthy child development. And so we know that those experiences should be nurturing and supportive during childhood so that it can lower all those rates of depression and prevent those poor mental health outcomes during adulthood. So things that you can do to build relationships are connect with the children around you, all the kids that are on your caseload, any kids that you come into contact with in the community, even your own children. It's about building that connection. It's about those serve and return interactions that we learned about when we talked about ACEs. So how we can reciprocate those actions and build that bond is so critical. You can also ask parents about the positive experiences that they remember from their childhood. So, excuse me. So anything that they would say is important to them. Now, they might not have had, the trips and the vacations and all the luxury things that people in middle class or upper class might have. But, they might appreciate more of the simple things, just a day at the park or just being able to share in an activity at their child's school. So, those things might look different to different families based on their culture and their kind of their family traditions. That's why it's important to really kind of look and see, from that family's perspective, what they consider to be a positive childhood experience. And, we spend so much time thinking about, what deficits the family has. Sometimes it's good to really think about those positive things instead. You can also share information about after school activities as a way to build those relationships and get involved and engaged, and asking about other positive adults that are in the child's life. So that could be, other caregivers or other family members or even just friends of the family that are those stable and nurturing people can be really important to build relationships with. I was worried about my 24-year-old son and our 3-year-old wouldn't spend much time together, but it's just the opposite. He's his shadow and plays with him and spends so much time with him. That's good. Yeah, especially when you have siblings that are so far apart in age. Yeah, it can be kind of a challenge to think about how they can build a connection together, but that's great that they find some things that they can do together that they both enjoy and that they can find a way to really bond. So that's great. Thanks for sharing that, Jen. And then environment. So we know that we need a safe and stable environment, ones that are equitable, that can meet the needs of all children at all levels, whether they have a disability or they're normally functioning. It's just really important that all children have access to those safe and stable environments. We really want to try to eliminate violence and bullying in the schools and just all the things that kids can come across these days. It's sometimes scary to think about all the things that they are exposed to within schools. But that's part of their day. You know, they're there 8 hours, just like we're at work 8 hours a day. Those kids are at school 8 hours a day. And so, you know, how are those connections and relationships being built? That's one part of it. You know, how are they being engaged? What is their environment? Is it safe? Because if a child doesn't feel safe at school, then they're not going to do very well. So, just like schools need to be safe, homes also need to be safe, stable, and loving as well. So that emotional security is so important for them to be able to be successful and to do all the things that they have to do to focus and learn and be educated. And then engagement. So children need to feel loved, appreciated, and connected to their communities. And we all know this. It's important to get involved in social events and be respectful of people's culture. You know, you all are working with different populations all across the state. Our state is so diverse with the people that are here. You've got your urban areas and your rural areas, and it's just very different. And so, how do you approach families and engage them on their level? That builds that trust, that builds that rapport, so that you can make a difference in their lives. So it's really important to just be respectful and be aware of all the different people that we're interacting with, and seeing how we can build those customs and traditions, and just being involved in our community is very important to be engaged. And then last, we have emotional growth. So children need opportunities to develop their emotions and feel supported during difficulties. So we need to provide opportunities for children to play naturally. So that encourages their leadership skills. It encourages their problem solving skills. It encourages them how to regulate themselves too. So how to ask for help, how to talk about their feelings if they get upset, or somebody steals their toy, they're going to cry or throw a fit. So how can they express themselves and understand how to get their needs met? It's all part of their emotional growth. So that's an important building block. And when we're talking about hope strategies. So hopefully you can kind of see how these all fit together with building positive childhood experiences using those building blocks. So a little bit more about the hope strategies. If they really want to promote positive health and well-being, so we're going to take some time talking about, what is a healthy, functioning family look like? What is a family that has good well-being? So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about supporting positive parenting practice and healthy child development. So, and then the multi-generational approach. So we have a two-gen approach, a multi-generational approaches, which is really where hope comes in, and then also those protective factors, which y'all are familiar with if you have been a part of any previous training that we've done. We have connected protective factors with the FAST family advocacy and support tool, so you all can know how to apply that positive childhood experiences and strengths-based lens to those FAST evaluations or assessments. And then attachment. So this should look familiar if you've been through the ACE training. So we know that attachment is something that builds over time. And attachment is very important when it comes to having that emotional growth, having that engagement with that caregiver. So it's important that that baby knows that they can get their needs met by whoever that caregiver is. And that's how trust develops. So there's no perfect parent. We've all had times where we have messed up and, not responded to the baby fast enough or, not done the things that the baby needs. So maybe we thought the baby needed the diaper changed and we tried to feed it instead or whatever. So all of those little things are what we would call a rupture. So there's going to be times when a new mom is learning how to care for a baby. She's not going to get everything right, of course, or a new dad for that matter. So there's going to be ruptures there in this attachment cycle, but there's always opportunity for repair. So we learn over time, hopefully, how to get it right, how to do the things that the child needs. So we become better parents as we go along and as we learn these skills and we're in tune to those child's cues. So that's all important, but that's actually building an attachment style. So even into adulthood, through all that child's development, through their adolescent years, and into adulthood, that style of attachment is being developed. So we know we can have, well, we hope to have secure attachments. That would be the goal, that we would all securely attach and be able to have healthy functioning relationships. But sometimes based on that type of caregiving that we received, we've learned from ACEs that, that can develop into an avoidant or an insecure attachment. And so those are the things that we want to try to mitigate during childhood so that we can have that secure attachment. And so those ruptures and repairs are constantly going on. Hopefully they're being minimized, but those are just part of how the cycle is occurring through those attachment and how that attachment style gets developed. So hopefully that's helpful. And it's also very helpful to know what your own attachment style is so that you can know how you relate. So if you're more of an avoidant type person, then you can, understand how your relationships might be affected by your own attachment style. So attachment's very interesting, as is birth order. So those are all things that, you can learn more about, do some research on, and really learn more about yourself, because all of those things really do impact how you work with families and how you view families and how you view yourself. Really does, influence the work that you do. So when we have secure attachments, we have a love of learning. We want to learn about birth order and what a healthy attachment is and all those things. So a love of learning. We have a comfortable sense of oneself. So we know ourselves. We know what our attachment style is. We know what our ACEs are. We know the childhood experiences that have shaped us. We're aware of ourselves. So the more self-aware we are, the more we can function in life and grow and have all those building blocks that hope represents. We want to have good social skills, good relationships, being able to stay committed in relationships and have that morality. And then, if you think about Maslow's hierarchy of human needs, the very top is that self-actualization. So even below that is healthy relationships, and self-actualization is the top of that pyramid. So there's some things that we need to build upon to have those secure attachments and have that fully functioning relationship. So I want to talk to some about the protective factors, which you all should be aware of these. If you are familiar or didn't attend any of those previous trainings on the protective factors in the FAST, if you could put that in the chat, I just kind of want to see who all has been familiar with that previously. Okay, like I said, and Jill has put in the chat, if you have not seen any of those previous trainings, I would highly suggest checking those out on our website. So Jill's put the link to that there. Those are very helpful because that's something that you all probably have received training on in service anyway too. But it's nice to make that connection with the FAST since it's something that you're using in your work. But so you see those protective factors here in this chart, and I really like it because it gives you some ideas on how you can build those protective factors just through your everyday interactions that you have with families. So it's really important to use all these because we do want to create positive experiences for families and children. So these are the keys to what it's all about, and hopefully you'll have some time to look at this more and go back and look at some trainings if you have not, but looks like most people have, so that's great. Good to hear. There's also, this is going to be on that resource sheet that we'll give you at the end. This is one of the websites that has a lot of more information about their model and some trainings that they offer. So I would suggest checking this out. So the strengthening families, their approach is a 2-gen approach. So 2-gen approach would be like, definitely have to have that because you want to actually work with the parent and the child or whoever that caregiver is. But we really want to look towards a multi-generational approach because that kind of encompasses everything around that whole environment. So when we think about environment being one of those building blocks, that's why it's really important to kind of have a bigger lens with that. Also want to consider culture, which we talked a little bit about previously, just knowing the variety of families that we're working with and how they're coming from different backgrounds. They're speaking different languages. How can we relate to them? So a strengths-based approach is another perspective that we'll talk about. Just how to really look at things positively, how to pull out those strengths when we're thinking about completing the FAST. Not just looking at what the needs are or the deficits, but also thinking about what strengths that family has. And then the biology of stress. So we know how stress impacts families. We know how ACEs are impacted through our lives and through our health. And so that's one component of the strengthening families approach, as well as resilience theory. So we'll talk about that. And then well-being, and then risk and protective factors. So those are all the components of the strengthening families approach. We'll move on. I really do like this graphic because it has a side for the risk factors and then a side for the protective factors. So in the middle, you see all the different levels where you've got the child, then the family, then the services, any kind of life events, and then society. So that circle gets bigger, much like the ecological model that we're going to talk about next. But it really does give a good two-sided view of what things are considered a risk factor and then what you can do to really promote and provide a protective factor to go along with that for each of those areas. So I really like this. I like how it is broken down, and it's a good visual to show, like for everything for every area here, there's things that we can do to mitigate those risk factors. So that's very important to really keep that in mind. And also thinking about what things might threaten that healthy parent-child outcome. So we think about things like our biology, psychology. So the mental health issues are very prevalent. Anything going on with the family, community, and then culture. So those all impact healthy parent-child outcomes. So like I said, the social ecological model is very important because it looks at what's going on an individual level, and then it's kind of like a ripple effect, and you can look at each layer. So as you pull that layer, pull the peeling of the onion back, you can see everything down to that individual level. So whether it's you at that individual level, it's the child at the individual level, whoever you're looking at, you can think about all the ways that that individual might be impacted by the things that are around them. So, it's really like looking at the whole picture, which is what we want to do when we work with families, of seeing all the ways that they're being impacted and influenced, um, all the way through all these levels. So much like the ecological model, we have eco mapping, which is the same kind of principle. So we're taking things that are all part of that model. So anything that's occurring in society, any kind of community agency or services, down to what's going on at that neighborhood level to that person level. So you all should be familiar with eco maps. Or has anybody ever used one with a family? So yeah, if you're trying to figure out, who all might be a placement for the child, it's good to do this so you can kind of brainstorm some resources that the family might have. Okay, so this might be something that you get in pre-service too, and I don't have a key here too, but I will explain this as we go along. So whoever your person is going to be in the middle. Like I said, this could be you, this could be one of your clients, or it could be the actual child that is in the center. In this example, we've got the person. So let's say it's, our client that we're working with. What stands out the most is these red squiggly lines. So as you're working with your client, you're going to ask them questions about, who is in your life? Who do you have in your life? So a lot of times, clients will feel like, I don't have any support. I don't have anybody I can count on. Nobody wants to have anything to do with me. Like everybody's just, hateful, and I can't depend on anybody. So, they kind of have that just, real negative attitude about it. But as you are going through this, and well, what about, do you have any neighbors? Do you have anybody at your child's school? What about your family? What about friends? So as you get them talking, they will come up with people. Like they might not have the best relationship. So these red squiggly lines are people that they don't necessarily have a good relationship with, but they have a relationship. And what do we learn about rupture and repair, right? So if this person is still kind of like, oh, they still have a connection to them, maybe that relationship can be repaired. And that's what we hope for. So we want to try to work on those relationships that may be ruptured, to see if they can be repaired, and try to build on those. So that's why those have red squiggly lines, because they currently don't have, or there might be some conflict there, or, maybe they just hadn't talked in a while, and they're not really sure, like, hey, if I call this person, will they really help me, kind of thing. So that's what that line means. Then for the bus driver and the neighbor, I don't know how well you can see it on the PowerPoint, but it's kind of like a dotted line. So they have a relationship with the bus driver. Maybe your client is the one that's like always out there waiting for their kid to come home, or sits out there because, they don't want their kid getting in trouble while they're waiting on the bus, or anybody to come and steal them. So, they're very vigilant about making sure that they wait on the bus with their kid as they should. That's great. So, so maybe they have like somewhat like they've seen the bus driver every time. The bus driver knows like, hey, that mom's always going to be out there. But maybe they haven't really ever had a conversation with the bus driver. Or same for the neighbor. Maybe they see the neighbor, but don't really know them that well. So there's somewhat of a relationship, but it could be strengthened and built upon. So you really just want to go through this and identify, who are the strongest relationships. So obviously that would be the solid line with the sister and the child and the spouse. So those are the solid lines. Thankfully they don't have much conflict with their child or sister or spouse. And those are healthy relationships. So that's good. And you could say, hey, you didn't think about your sister, as a resource for you. So that's really helping that family identify those social supports, which is one of our protective factors. And then you've got, just somebody out here in the blank. You can fill that in. and then a teacher out here. So maybe they have potential to build these relationships. They're definitely a part of the child's life, but maybe that person just has not really made any attempts to try to, contact the teacher or get to know the teacher. But building these eco maps is a very useful tool for mapping social relationships. And it gives you a good idea of who all is involved in the child's life and all the systems that are at play. So it really gives the family a good idea too of who all, what all their relationships are like, because it's kind of like that visual representation. Right. So moving on to that multi-generational approach. So even in that eco map, you might identify some family members that you didn't know about previously, which would be helpful when you're trying to have this multi-generational approach. You really want to be looking at everybody in the family and seeing who has the capacity to be a support to the family. So that's really good to kind of look at all family members that could be involved. So in order to take action, so you want to work with everybody that's involved in the child's environment, because we know that adversity in childhood leads to adult health and mental health illness that can be passed through gene expression across generations. And so children's emotional well-being is tied very closely to the mental health of their parents and any non-family member caregivers. And so the emotional and behavioral needs of infants and toddlers and preschoolers are best met through coordinated services that focus on their full environment of relationships. So even when you're thinking about providers for families, think about somebody that is really willing to work with all family members. So of course, there's a benefit to like individual therapy, but like if it comes to like somebody that does family therapy as well, that would really be a benefit of somebody that's using that multi-generational approach. So one of the components of the Strengthening Families approach was family well-being. So we're going to talk a little bit about that here. So we know that healthy functioning and success throughout childhood, adolescence, and into adulthood depends on several factors. So we have to think about the families that we were working with. Basically, what is their cognitive level? How are they functioning cognitively? You have different levels of functioning, obviously. So, you have families that can function very well. You might have a family member that has a lot of health issues that might get in the way of their ability to perform certain functions. You might have family members that have cognitive delays or learning disability or other mental health issues. You might have kids with behavioral problems or adults with behavioral problems or emotional problems. You might have issues with how someone functions socially in their environment, or you might have somebody with an insecure attachment. So how is that going to impact the family and how they function and their overall well-being? So those are challenges that we have to work with, but they're very much so a part of everyone's everyday life. No, people are not all perfect and all the same. So we have to learn how to work with different types of people. We have to learn how to communicate and interact with one another. We also have to think about how they're able to function in their home and then in their community. How successful are they at work? Do they have a hard time keeping a job? How are they in the home? Are they keeping a clean home? Do they have the resources that they need? How are they providing for their family? Do they have money to pay their rent? Do they have things in the home that they need? So you're always assessing these things as part of their family well-being. How protective are they? When you have domestic violence in the home or sexual abuse in the home, how protective are the the parents are one another against one another? How protective are they? You really have to know your families and know where they are to have a sense of where they're at with their well-being. But all families unequivocally need to know that they are loved, definitely, and experience pleasure in each other's presence. So if you have a home with domestic violence or sexual abuse, it's really hard for them to, have that sense of safety. That's one of those basic needs on Maslow's hierarchy of human needs. And then the basic needs of providing. So did they have those food, clothing, shelter? Did they have that? So you can really look at families in that sense too. The next slide talks more about how family members can serve as buffers between its members. So how good is that family member at advocating for their child? So whether it's an issue they're having at school, or some kind of conflict that they're having outside of school, maybe they're not getting along with the neighborhood kids, how are they able to serve as buffers for the things that are coming against them as a family? How united can they be? How well do they advocate for each other? How well are they able to confront any kind of negative social experiences that they might be going through? Are they prepared to do that? Do they have the skills to do that? Are they able to bond? So, and initially, when we talked about what childhood experiences you would consider, a lot of that had to do with your opportunities for bonding. So, do they have opportunities to do that? Do they demonstrate that resilience? Are they able to face adversity? Do they resolve those conflicts? Do they see challenges as an opportunity to bond and get closer to one another? Are they able to offer each other emotional support and encouragement? So those are some more components of what we would consider for a family to have that well-being that we want, so that we know that they can be resilient to things that they're coming across and dealing with in life. That's just a part of life. When we think about resilience, we know families have to be resilient as well as we do. So how do you define resilience, and what does it look like in families that you work with? You can put that in the chat. How do you define resilience, and what does it look like in families you work with? Put that in the chat, please. Are you able to do things and work with what they have to do the best they can? Okay, good. Overcoming obstacles. Very good. Dealing with emergencies and crisis in a way that they can still function day to day, right? So emotional capacity, that's huge. The ability to keep going, being able to continue despite the circumstances. That's good. All right. Thank you. Healthy despite adversity, able to successfully deal with hardship. Okay, so you all pretty much gave the definition for resilience. Great job. It's the human capacity to face, overcome, and be strengthened by and even transformed by the adversities of life. I mean, and that word transformed like really stands out to me because, there's situations that we all run across that we feel like, oh my gosh, I don't know how I'm going to make it out of this stressor, this event. It just seems so overwhelming, but how they actually end up shaping us and transforming us is amazing. So that makes you grateful for the challenges that you have sometimes, because you realize where your strengths come from, right? So like what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I hate that because I feel like I'm being killed right now having to deal with this. But, at the end of it, you realize like, wow, okay, I was an overcomer. Like I survived that. It might have been rough. But you survived. Ooh, I like that. They're able to reach out to others and ask for help when needed. Now, actually, that was part of this training that I had, which is a very long, long training. But I took it out. But that's a really good piece of being able to ask for help. So when you're going through something, how likely are you to ask for help? And I think that is a character trait, not a flaw. So that is a bonus, a plus to be able to ask for help. It is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of strength to ask for help. So that's so great. I'm so glad you brought that up, Jen. Love that. So we know that, the process of managing stress, it's our how we are learning through that exposure to those challenging experiences and life events, whether or not we feel support when we go through those, what the environment is like, who we have as social supports in our life are so important. So resilience is very important. So the resilience approach draws out family strengths to meet the potential for the family to meet those challenges. So it goes beyond just regular coping and problem solving. I mean, you really got to dig deep to get through some things sometimes that involves just more transformation and growth. So it really is an ability for that family to build stronger bonds because of what they've been challenged with, and they've been able to be successful. So you're building resilience in families when you work with them and you're helping them to overcome their challenges, which is amazing. So, a strengths based approach, we want to try to use this approach with families because we need to have the belief that all families possess strengths. We need to have the belief that family strengths can help maintain cohesion. That's what helps keep them together so they don't have to be separated because they can, find the things that they have that they're good at and use them to leverage their unity and keep them being able to support one another. And we know that parents have to be considered the experts about their family and what they want for their child. So, what are some strengths in your own family? Put that in the chat. What is your family good at? Communication. That's a good one. That's a great one to have as a strength. Can depend on each other. That's good. Unconditional love. That's so important to feel that sense of love, supporting one another. Focus on the positive. That's good. That's what this is all about. Focusing on the positive. Great. So, what about in the work you do with your families? Is it challenging to identify other people's strengths that they hard to see, strengths of families that you work with? Not really. Okay. That's good. It's good if you can identify strengths in the families that you work with. So why might it be hard to identify strengths? And why is it important to be able to identify strengths in helping to engage families? The family likes to know their strengths, right? Just like that eco map, you're helping them see, like, hey, you do have a support system here. There are people in your life that you didn't think about or that you can build more stronger relationships with. So helping them see that, helping them see their strengths, yes. It's very good to not just be critical and deficit lens all the time. So our core strengths, we want to have like that healthy attachment that we've talked about before. We want to be able to regulate ourselves. So if we're not regulated, the people around us are not going to be regulated. We want to be affiliated to that sense of belonging and connectedness. We want to be attuned to others' needs. We want to have a level of tolerance. So where we understand that, like, hey, you're different. You might have different beliefs. You might do different things, but I'm going to have that level of tolerance to work with you because I have respect for you. So all of that kind of goes together in building from those core strengths. So another thing we want to talk about is a deficit lens. So when we think about deficits, that family is just going to think about all the things that, oh, okay, you're being judgmental towards them, or you think that I need to be fixed, or you think there's something wrong with me. So just like ACEs, when we talked about ACEs, it's not what's wrong with you, it's what happened to you. So having some compassion, having some understanding, having some, less judgment and more acceptance or more tolerance for, the challenges that people are going through, having some compassion so that you can really help families identify their strengths and build on those strengths is what's very important. So it's in those everyday interactions that we're able to build on that positivity, build on that strengths-based approach. We're going to understand and learn our families more and know what their support systems are like, recognize their protective factors, and share that with them. Share about their child's progress and how they're doing and what their well-being, what those factors are that you see in that family that you can build upon. And we're going to help them connect to resources and emphasize the importance of self-care, not just for families, but for ourselves too. So like I said, if we're not regulated, then we're not going to be able to regulate the people around us. So we have to be in control of our own thoughts and emotions and behaviors and see how our composure is being impacted by other people's emotions and behaviors so that we can kind of keep each other in check. So self-regulation has a lot to do with how you model the certain behaviors that you want. That kind of goes along with executive functioning too, because it's like a control tower with so much going on. You've got, everything going on in your brain, and you're trying to figure out how to problem solve, and we're trying to learn how to regulate and control all of our impulses and not be distracted and follow the rules and do all the things that you're supposed to do. So that really goes hand in hand with being able to regulate yourself, because there's a lot going on that we have to function. So I don't have time to get into a whole lot of the science of the positive, but this is on your reference sheet or resource guide. I would strongly encourage you to look up a little bit more about the science of the positive. This could be a whole training in itself, but I do want to bring it to your attention just so that you have something to kind of reference and go back and look at later. But it kind of goes along with that positive childhood experiences. It's really shifting from the negative to the positive. And so the more we want positive things in our life, the more we have to put out positive. So it starts in our brain with what we're thinking. We're focusing on all the positive things. We're focusing on the good things, and we're building on those things. So we're going to see more of that because that's what we're putting out, and those come from our thoughts. So our thoughts create our world. Our thoughts create what happens. And so we really have a lot of control over our environment when we think about how it all comes from just being positive. Power of gratitude. It's a real thing. And then the trauma-informed approach. You all should be familiar with SAMHSA's principles of trauma-informed care. So having safety, trustworthiness, empowerment, collaboration, peer support, and being aware of history, gender, and culture. These are also important to think about in our work with families, how we can incorporate these. And these all really do align with those building blocks for hope. And they also align with our ecological model. They align with our hope framework. They align with our strengthening families perspective of protective factors. So all these are like puzzle pieces that fit together, and we need to use all of them in our work with families. Some suggestions for having a trauma-informed approach is just being aware and using those resilience and protective factors. Addressing the parent and caregiver trauma and the impact it has on the family. Having a continuity of care or integrated healthcare. I'm a firm believer in integrated healthcare, how that can be very impactful. Having the environment that addresses all the areas of need that the family has. And then recognizing and responding to that trauma, screening for trauma. You all do this in your work, using that culturally appropriate lens. And then obviously we're always going to provide families with the resources and services that they need. Along with that, that your regional consultant can help provide evidence-based resources to you. One of them is MST. So there's a training coming up on that to learn more about this program and how it can be beneficial to the families that you work with. So hopefully you'll join us for more. And if you ever have any suggestions for future training, you can put those in the chat or email Serena, let her know. She'll pass that on to us. Do you want to share the QR code for our website? You can go in there and look at any trainings. We have maps on there for providers, PCIT providers. You can contact your regional prevention consultant. There's all kinds of good stuff on our website, as well as previously recorded trainings that you may have missed.